Watch our full interviews with film industry officials and economic development leaders on the Netflix deal next week on New Mexico in Focus. Now, right now, let's dive back into the election results. We mentioned the blue wave earlier, and New Mexico definitely felt the effects this week. The Republican Party headed into the midterms needing to flip 4 seats to retake control of the state house. But instead, they actually lost as many as 10 seats, with some races still to be finalized. There's still a chance Democrats will hold at least 47 of the 70 total seats in the House. That is really remarkable. What's the overall impact? We'll get into the details in a second. What's the overall impact of that kind of a spread?
Well, it means we're going to see a whole lot of progressive, a big progressive agenda, I think, for this next session. We've got, the Democrats have the governor's office. The Democrats have the House. The Democrats keep the Senate. Obviously, there's no change there. Right. So I think you're going to be able to see a lot more progressive movement on a lot of fronts, and it means that the more conservative element in both the House and the Senate are just not going to be able to have their issues, or they're going to have to work very closely across the aisle to come up with some compromises. I think for me it's interesting to see the rural versus urban. That's always sort of a dynamic in the State House and in the Senate. Of course, in the Senate, there's more. The Democrats that are rural are more conservative, so there's more of that urban versus rural issue. Right. But I think you're just going to see a whole lot of ideas around, especially education, I think, and clean energy issues. Those 2 topics are going to be huge. They're obviously priorities that Michelle talked about even in her acceptance speech. So she's also she's been an elected official for a long time. She's had a lot of experience in state government as well as in Congress. So I think with that, she's going to be able to work with legislators a lot more closely than I think Martinez did in her first term. I think her first term, Martinez really didn't have a lot of people on the ground that were working her agenda. Right. And I think we're going to see in Michelle's case a throwback to the way that Richardson used to do his agenda, which was to really have people, in the thick of it and pushing her priorities and working with legislators. And so we're going to probably go back to that style of politics. He was very effective in doing that. And I think we'll see more of that from Michelle.
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Because that makes sense at a lot of levels, doesn't it? Michelle has been there. She's a known entity. She's strong. It's not as if she's brand new trying to order people around and they're sort of resistant. They know her. They know what's up.
Yeah, she's a known quantity. And I don't think that she's going to be the kind of leader that's going to rub the loser's face in it and say, now it's all me. I think that what she wants to do,
is that the smart play?
I think
conciliatory.
I think the smart play is to be conciliatory because with that mandate comes great responsibility. And, we don't want it to be a situation where we're making claims that we can't support, so we have to be able to get consensus and buy-in from everybody who's up there who wants common sense legislation and not be acting like a kid in the candy store saying that, does the victor go the spoils.
Right.
We don't want to do that.
Exactly right. Michael, I want to talk about some of the judicial races. The Democratic challenger in the Supreme Court race beat out the incumbent, who was a Susana Martinez appointee. And across the board, the appellate court races, big shift, Democratic women challengers dominating their male incumbents. Very, very interesting, wasn't it? Let's take the Supreme Court race first. Incumbency is powerful, but is this just a blue wave victim sort of rolling in the wave, unfortunately? But is that how you see this, or was it more about the person winning the seat over the incumbent?
I think it's more about the person in the seat. But it's this wave there is a wave there, so you can catch the momentum, and I think a lot of the outcomes reflect that.
Tom, pick up on that if you would too. It's a Martinez appointee. She was a lame duck. It felt like it was there for the taking, and it got took. It was an interesting race.
Yeah. In which race was this again? I'm sorry.
The Supreme Court. Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, I didn't focus in on that one too much. I think just to kind of harken back on some of the initial conversation about the responsibility of the governor and how the governor works with the legislative branch. I think that the Senate is very well positioned again to be kind of that conscience. Because one of the things that the Democrats enjoyed this go around was not a whole lot of Republican resistance. You know, the national agenda really helped the Democratic Party tremendously here. And the best way for the Democratic Party to re-energize the Republican Party is to give them a reason, meaning the Republicans, a chance to unite and stuff. And so if the agenda goes too far to the left, you'll give those in the middle and on the right a chance to say, well, wait a second, I'm not so sure I agree with this. And so all of a sudden they'll have a common enemy in the fact that in a belief system. And so if the Democrats want to continue their continued run of success, which they were tremendous this last year, is they really have to be able to make sure that they don't abuse that privilege too much.
One of the things I want to talk with you about, particularly Laura, is turnout. It was very, very interesting. Tuesday night, you know, you could see it coming even before Tuesday night. You knew what was up. Talk about in New Mexico terms, we had nearly 680,000 New Mexicans voted in this election. It's an amazing number for a midterm, isn't it? When you think about how many people got activated and just out there.
I mean, those are presidential year level turnout.
Right.
And so for a midterm, it's really off the charts. We don't see that. And, you know, those of us who are sort of students of this kind of data, you go back and you look at trends. Doing political campaigns is a little bit like, there's an art and there's a science, and the science is really looking at historical trends and trying to plan for that. And that's where polls, I think, are really interesting, and you can kind of frame them in a certain way, because polls tend to go after basically likely voters, people who have been solid folks in midterm elections, which is a very specific demographic. There's also a factor about who's accessible, so people with usually home phones.
Right.
There's more and more cell phone usage, but
right.
it's still not the norm to be able to catch people on their cell phones. So you have a very specific demographic that you get in polls. If you have huge turnout, then really in New Mexico, a bigger turnout means more Democrats getting elected, and that's what's happened in the last few races. If you look historically, the ones that have had the most turnout, you've had sweeps of Democrats in those. And so it's very interesting that that's what happened, and we saw huge volumes of early vote and absentee ballot. And so I think, I was just talking with my buddy Maggie about this process, because down in Doña Ana County, they really did not anticipate the amount of absentee ballots there would be. And I really hope that we can work with Doña Ana County in general to try to increase their process, make it a little bit more standardized the way that Maggie did here in Bernalillo County, because it's such a huge area. Right. And what you don't want is to have people feel like their vote isn't necessarily going to count, or it's not going to be counted right away, and so that we're going to end up with this after effect of not knowing who the final winner was. We had that in Bernalillo County prior to Maggie being the clerk. There were times where we were waiting for days or sometimes weeks to figure out who the winner was.
My people are tired, they have to go home.
And she worked really hard to make sure that did not occur under her term, and I think we need to make sure that process gets replicated in other parts of the state where we're seeing that kind of turnout.
Glad you mentioned that. That's a tough one for Doña Ana County. I'm sure they're thinking
apparently
about
they only
this
had
as
7
well.
people on their board, and they just did not anticipate as many ballots as came in.
That's right. Michael, another oddity from our election cycle here in New Mexico. We had a Libertarian candidate for Senate, and he did not fare well, our ex-Governor Gary Johnson. There's some question now about major party status. Did this all work out? This whole thing. But in general terms, your sense of him getting in the race, was it a lark? Was it serious? Was it, well, how did you see this thing?
Well, I think you'd have to ask him,
so,
in terms of, what was his motivation, and did he really think that he had a chance at it? I don't know, to my way of thinking, I think it was a distraction. I think he's had his day. The reality is we all have a window of opportunity. And as time progresses, it gets narrower.
That's right.
And then you have to accept the reality of maybe your time has passed.
That's right. Sometimes we hasten the closing of that window ourselves.
Wow.
Too.
I'm so depressed.
Yeah, really.
So this is your lesson for the weekend, folks.
Right?
It's like hourglass, sand through an hourglass. I love it.
The expiry date.
I mentioned in passing, I want to come back to the appellate court situation. Yes.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. There was a sense that this might be a possibility as it was going along, but then it happened. It was like, wow, this is amazing.
8 women on that court, and I think if you look nationally, New Mexico's got to be a leader in that. We're a small
I got to
state.
think, yeah.
And to have 8 women running the Court of Appeals, I think it's great. I got a lot of attorney friends who are saying, great. They're doing a good job, and I think we're going to see lots of really good things coming from those women, young women who have, good legal minds who are
right.
going to
That's
make a
right.
difference in that court.
That's right.
And it's about time we lead. I mean, let's get real here. Given the issues that New Mexico faces, what we really need, and I think we see it coming, it is there, is ethical, visionary leadership. And if you have that, there's nothing you can't do. There is, again, for this administration and going forward, there's an opportunity to really do something, do it well, do it in the right way, and we can't squander that opportunity because things are not going to get better on their own.
That's right. That's right.
And those people who are in those positions now, they will be judged.
As Kathy was mentioning, exactly. Everyone's on the hook now, exactly. We're going to finish up here, Tom. The appellate situation we're talking about, perception-wise, it's interesting, isn't it? When you have a clean sweep of women taking these offices, something just feels good about it. You can't even explain it. It just feels right and proper. But how does that play out in the public's perception, mind?
It will help with level of trust amongst law enforcement in general, whether it be the courts or the enforcement end. With that type of turnout and that type of result, you have a lot of folks who will say, you know what, because of that, I feel like my voice was heard, and I have a say in the system. So,
Right.
While I'm hard pressed to think that a lot of folks who voted for the different judiciary could cite anything specific, they felt good and they wanted a change, and they got one.
That's right. Just a little time left on this one. Just to be clear, it's 8 out of the 10 are women now. There's a couple of guys left over. Another election coming up. You'll see what happens there. Does it make a big difference for New Mexico when you see something like this happen on the appellate court
Well, absolutely.
level?
I think it's a sea change. I
Yeah.
mean, just in the time that I've been in New Mexico as an attorney, it's been amazing to see the amount of change. And I think we're seeing changing demographics in general in the state bar. A lot more women going to law school, graduating from law school, becoming attorneys.
Right.
But then to see that effect coming into the judiciary as well, I think it's a huge, I think it puts New Mexico on the map for a lot of things. But we've also had, compared to other states, we've had a much larger percentage of Hispanic members of the judiciary. I mean, that's a huge deal, and I think New Mexico is a majority-minority state, so that's not surprising at all. But to see the power of women and to be able to have them harness their experience and their qualifications and their balance between, their personal lives and their professional lives, I think it's huge for a lot of people, and hopefully it makes, it makes hopefully school children and people in college feel
right.
like they can do anything.
That's right. Quick note, Michael, before we get out of here, interesting little bit of change here in New Mexico. Navajo Nation also voted for change.
That's right.
We got to get this in as well. In 30 seconds, what was your sense of the race and why it came out the way it did?
Well, my understanding was there was a lot of dissatisfaction with President Begay, and of course his running mate was the one that ran for president against him. He is a young man, and so I think that it's reflecting again sort of a shift in leadership, in younger leadership, and I think it'll be good to see. It'll be good to see a younger leader, I believe.
We'll have to see that play out. We'll have to end that there. Now, next up on the line, New Mexico's teacher shortage. Also ahead, a very special Dia de los Muertos art installation. You're gonna love this. Designed and created by the Working Classroom here in Albuquerque, and meant to bring attention to water contamination issues.